Welcome to Just Another Car Show. My name is Sam, and I am the first loser on Donut's Fix a Car to Win a Car. Here's what I think went wrong. I want to start out this with I have no beef with anyone at Donut. They were honestly all very, very nice, and the producers, the directors, everyone was just really cool. But there was a few things that went pretty wrong with the whole thing. This story actually starts about a year ago. When Donut started put out the first ad for offering for a subscriber to fix a car to win a car, I applied. You have to make this video, and it has a bunch of specifications of what you have to say in the video and these questions you have to answer. I made a video walking around our backyard, talking about the cars we had, and this is when the Ranchero was still barely running. I had the Mustang, we hadn't started the drift car yet, we didn't have the red 240, and we had never welded a single thing in our entire lives. I sent it in. I got accepted a year ago. And when I got that email originally, I was so excited. I did an interview with Adam, their shop manager, and a couple others, and had a talk with them and so on and so forth. And everything was lined up to go sometime in March, and then nothing happened. I think after they did a few of them, they realized they either needed to take a step back, or maybe I was a backup or something for what they originally had planned. But they took a step back and pushed it a year. So I got an email basically saying, hey, look, we're not gonna do it, but next year or at the end of this year, we're gonna start it back up at some point and we are gonna do it. I then sat there and, forgot about it almost in a way. Then in about March of 2023, I saw they posted another ad up to get more people to do the show. So naturally I reapplied, and then I got an email from one of the guys at Donut basically asking me to reapply for the current one. So they said for me to send in the exact same video I had before, and hopefully you'll get picked this year and you'll do it. That was in March. It is currently July. I heard nothing back. I added a little bit extra to my video at the end because I felt like I had learned a lot in the last year, and I felt like it would be smart to kind of show some of my mechanical skills in that video. I showed a few different things, showed the drift car that we started building, our series on our S13, and I showed that the Ranchero being all finished and everything like that. So I sent that video, and I heard nothing, and nothing, and nothing, and I just kind of assumed that I wasn't picked. And then I saw they post another post about getting more people to do it. I was like, wow, I really didn't get picked. I was like, they're asking for more people, and I haven't even got an email yet about it at all. And then about a week later, when I was in Ohio, running around the Shelby Cobra Club with my dad, I got an email from Donut. And it was a booking notice for Wednesday, I believe the 28th. And I kind of got super excited. I was like, wow, this is actually happening, and so on and so forth. And I had been preparing for this, I prepared for this last year when I thought I was gonna do it the first time. And so now it comes to this year, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm better now, I know more stuff. I was like, this is gonna be a walk in the park. I accepted the invitation, and then I flew back from the East Coast a day early to be able to do the competition on that Wednesday. So the day of, I was pretty nervous. I talked to a lot of my friends about this because I wanted to just let them know that what I was doing. I thought it was cool. I was super excited, also a little nervous. I was gonna try to research things and study a little bit, but then I had one of my friends tell me, what are they gonna do that you're not gonna know? I was like, you know what, you're right. I don't know. If my skills don't line up to what they give me, then so be it. It is what it is. And I just got a really long night's sleep, woke up that morning, drove all the way to Inglewood, California, and went to their office. It was an interesting experience because they have a pretty cool office. You walk in, they introed me to everyone. I met James, Nolan, Zach, Jeremiah, Justin, and a bunch of producers and directors that were there. I had lunch with them, and we hung out, and we talked about it. Before we had our lunch, they wanted to film beforehand. So the first things we did is I walked in and I did the intro scene of me seeing the car for the first time. It was a surprise. It's not like I knew what the car was. I had no idea. I now realize they posted on their Instagram a picture of the car. I didn't know. If I knew that, obviously I would have been studying for it Corvettes, but I didn't know. I got the craziest butterflies. I talk to camera. On this channel, we talk to camera all the time. I have no problem. That was some of the biggest butterflies I've ever got in my stomach to talking to a lens. It was a little crazy. At that point, once I had seen the car for the first time, I took a bunch of thumbnail pictures for them, and I went to lunch. They gave me a new shirt because they wanted me to stand out in the crowd a little more when I was working on the car. So I got like this bright green like donut shirt. After lunch, basically the last like 20-ish minutes, I had my phone before I had to go in and actually do the competition. So I knew it was a C5, I knew it was a Z06, I knew it was a Corvette, but I have never touched an LS engine or a Corvette in my entire life. We're gonna put one in the drift car, but we haven't gotten to that point yet. We still haven't put in an engine or gotten the engine for it. I started doing a little bit of research. I knew that the clock only said 90 minutes, and all the other ones I saw were pretty much either 2 or 3 hours of time to do everything they needed to do. So I kind of assumed that this was gonna be something that was gonna be either one really big thing, or it was gonna be something that was like kind of difficult to do and then like a bunch of little small things. So I started looking into things go wrong with the Corvette, and the cam and crank position sensors came up all over the place. I watched a couple forums and looked at a couple things just to see where the position of those were. I knew it was in a weird place. I knew it was under the starter on the bottom side of the engine. You know, I don't know the layout of the engine. I know it's a V8, but other than that, I know nothing about it. As I'm doing this stuff, they come in and they tell me it's time. I then walk in and I get to look around the car 1 or 2 more times, and then it is time to go. I went to go try to open the car, and the car is locked. Oh, I need keys, I guess. Oh, he needs keys. And they roll over this rolling table and they uncover it, and there's an ice block that is huge. And the key is dead center in the middle of it. And they said I could use anything in the shop to get that key out. I went and got a hammer with a pretty sharp end on it, and I went at it. And it was honestly a lot of fun. I was having a great time. And you know, at this point I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, okay, I'm breaking this key out. It can't be that crazy. This is one of the things that had me doing. It's only a 90-minute timer. It can't be anything crazy. I used a map gas torch to kind of melt it out towards the end. And I go open the car, I go put the key in, and I try starting it, and nothing. So first thing I do is go over and open the hood on the car. First thing obviously I checked was the battery. The car also wouldn't unlock with the little key fob, so it's a pretty good idea that it's probably the battery in it and nothing else. Checked the battery with a multimeter, and it was at like 4 volts. I asked for a battery. They brought me a battery. I put the new battery in. It probably took, I was probably at like 15 minutes down at this point. It wasn't that bad. I mean, the ice didn't take super long, and then getting in the car and doing that didn't take too long. At that point, now the car had power. I go in, I go to try to crank it, cranks, and nothing. And so I'm like, okay, so it's not starting. Gotta figure out why it doesn't start. It's, you know, the big things: fuel, spark, air. Generally, pretty easy to figure out which one it is. So first thing I did is I asked them for a fuel pressure gauge. I threw it on the fuel rail, checked the fuel pressure. I had fuel pressure. So I at least knew the fuel pump was pumping, and that was something they did a lot of times on these cars, and a few of the episodes they did. They disabled fuel pumps, they took the fuel pump relay out, they had a bad fuel pump in general. It was something that was commonly done, so I was like, I'm gonna check this first. And so the fuel pump was working. Next thing I go and check is spark. As I'm going to the number 1 spark plug and I pull on the wire to go pull it out because I have a spark tester, the spark plug wire just breaks in half. Obviously I found one of the problems. So I say I need a spark plug wire. I go around and check each spark plug, and they're pretty short. Like spark plug wires in LSs are only about this big because the coil's on top, spark plug goes down, and then your plug's at the bottom. It's a pretty simple system. So I go and pull on all of them, and you don't pull on spark plugs very hard because the wires are actually really fragile, and I actually showed it to camera at one point later in the video of me pulling a spark plug wire, and literally a brand new one, being able to pull it apart and break it. It's not hard to break these things. So I was being gentle. I wasn't really tugging on it, but I was tugging on enough that I should find any problems that existed. I didn't find anything wrong with them. I then replaced that single spark plug wire. I checked spark on that wire, and I confirmed that spark was coming to at least the spark plugs, because one spark plug at least had spark, aka I should get some sort of pop or bang, or you know, I should hear something trying to turn over. It was turning over, it wasn't trying to fire though. I've now checked the fuel, I checked the spark, and this is where it kind of started going to crap. I, at this point, kind of felt really bad. I had checked the main 2 things that made cars start, and even if, you know, they'd screwed with a couple injectors, or if they had, you know, screwed with a couple spark plugs or something like that, the car should still try to start. The car wasn't even attempting to start. my mind starts kind of spinning and trying to figure out what is wrong with it. And the only thing that kept coming back to my mind is I know that LSs and crank position sensors are a huge problem. I decided to lift up the car and check for a crank position sensor. I've never seen one. I've never touched one. I've never even messed with it in my entire life. I start looking around the area I assumed it would be, which is right under the starter is. And I'm staring under there. I'm looking. I'm trying to decide what I want to do. And they're all around me. The whole time I'm doing this, everyone is just around me. And this is kind of where the problem started was, in all the videos I watched from before, all the things they're telling you are normally kind of hints or jokes. That was kind of the whole thing. The jokes I was getting were not jokes of, oh, haha, very funny. Like, it was like misdirecting me in a way that didn't help me. The first big example was when I got under the car and I started looking for this crank position sensor. I found a hole that I thought would be the crank position sensor. I could not find a connector that was hanging, because normally, if it was unplugged or something, you'd see a connector hanging or something that would plug into, or the hole for it or something. I could not find a connector. I think it was Zach Job was laying next to me underneath the car, and they had the camera from the other side. I don't know whether this is the thing. And if you ask for something that you don't need, you get 10 minutes taken off the clock. And so I'm already at this point down to probably, 60 minutes-ish at this point is my guess. I'm not exactly sure where I was. I'm like, I know it's a problem that happens. I'm not sure if it's something that you guys would do. Preferencing this, I have no idea how many things are wrong with this car. Like, they didn't tell me beforehand, oh, there's 5 or 6 things wrong with the car. There were 6 things. And actually later in the video, they actually tell me that. But they never told me that from the beginning. So I'm looking at where this crank position sensor would be, and Zach Job says to me, he goes, crank position sensors go bad on LSs a lot. It's a pretty common problem. And so I'm just thinking in my head, I'm like, everything tells me something's not wrong with this. But one of the hosts is giving me like a hint, I felt like, on that. All the videos I watch on these, they're giving them hints. Like, hey, I wonder if it's sparking, or give them like soft gestures towards the problem. So I thought that's what I was getting, was, hey, look, you're not sure. We obviously can tell you're not sure if this is it or not. Here is the hint to say it is. And so I asked for it. 10 minutes off the clock. Then I walk over the other side of the car and I crank it again just to hear it again. And Justin says to me, hey, you have fuel, you have spark, what are you missing to make the car start? That's air. And I know that. That's the other thing you need to make a car start. I start going into a rabbit hole of what problem with air. And the only thing I can think of that would cause it to start is 2 things. Either one, they put something blocking the air filter so no air was getting into the engine, or 2, that the throttle body was not opening, or like the idle throttle valve was not like opening enough to let air in to even start the car. So I get someone in the car, they push the pedal down, I see the throttle blades move, so I know everything's working there. But it was something I probably spent like 5-6 minutes on, because I was kind of directed in that way. Hey, you have fuel, you have spark, what about air? Well, I had air. The car still wasn't starting. And at this point, I was probably down to like 40 minutes, and they stopped it. Just kind of, at this point, I'm scrambling. I have no idea what's going on. They surprised me with a Borla exhaust for the car, brand new. They sponsored the episode, the whole thing. And if I could put this Borla exhaust system on in under 30 minutes, I would get 20 minutes added to my time. So I start doing the exhaust, and I rip it all apart, I open it up, and I start putting on the car. They had Jeremiah help me because, pulling big exhaust out of a car is kind of a pain in the butt. Either way, it didn't take us very long. Popped off the sway bar, popped out the exhaust, threw the new ones in, ran the clamps on, ran everything up on, hung the exhaust. We even adjusted it so that it was straight, and it was done in like 15 minutes. One part of me, while this is going on, I'm also thinking about what's wrong with the car, because I'm doing this exhaust system. I'm also figuring out what's wrong with the car. And the other part of me is like, this was easy for me. This was something that was super easy. It's like, my skills aren't lacking. It's just like, I'm just stuck in a situation that I have no idea how to deal with, and I don't really have the resources to figure it out, because I don't have like Google or anything, you know what I mean? It's not like I can pull my phone and be like, hey, I'm just gonna Google what's wrong with the car. I got back into it, I got 20 minutes added, and I asked for a code reader. They brought me a code reader, and I should plug it in, and the code reader doesn't even turn on. As far as I understand, the code reader always turns on when you plug in and turn on the car. Code reader would not turn on. And they're all around me, and one of them goes, "What happens when the code reader doesn't work?" And I'm like, I don't know. I was honestly at this point getting like, I was just confused because I'm like, I have no idea what happens when the code reader doesn't turn on. Is the ECU dead? These two cars obviously don't have ECUs in them. The other cars I own, which are Mercedes and BMWs, those cars, if the OBD2 port didn't work, then I'd assume the computer was dead or unplugged. That would be really the only explanation for it. I don't even know where the ECU is in the car. I go up front, I start checking fuses, and I cannot find a fuse that goes to ECU or OBD2 or anything that looks normal. I knew there was another fuse box in the floor panel of the passenger side, and as I'm looking around the area, I'm like, I start talking about the ECU and how if the thing doesn't work, then the ECU maybe could be dead. And then Justin was like, maybe you should look under this thing, and started tapping on like the windshield washer tank. So I go over to the windshield washer box, and I'm like, maybe the ECU's under there. Maybe I should go check that, because he like tapped on it. He's like, maybe you should check under here. And I go and start unscrewing, and they're like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I thought that it was a hint of like, you know, hey, maybe you should go look under this. And I think this is really the moment they realized I had no idea where stuff on a Corvette was, because why would I be looking under a windshield washer tank? But that's kind of what the hint I was given was, like, there's something under the windshield washer tank. I then basically whispered in my ear that, hey, you should check the fuse box in the passenger side. I think they really realized something where they screwed up, and that this car, I know nothing about it. So I get in the passenger side, I start looking toward the fuse box, and I was basically given the hint straight up that it was fuse 14. Fuse number 14 was blown, which apparently caused the car not to start at all. That is something I would have never found, ever, in a million years. I mean, if I would have had it here at our shop and been able to get on my phone and do research and figure this out, yeah, I would have figured it out eventually. But there's no way in that time crunch I would have been able to figure it out, because I've just never touched Corvettes. That's something only a Corvette owner or someone who works on them constantly would know about. I'm feeling a little defeated because I have no idea anything about the car, and I'm kind of just, I think they kind of felt like they thought I knew something about the car, and I was basically just kind of lost. After I changed the fuse, I went over and I tried starting the car. Car started, but it was running really, really, really rough. And this is where I was trying to get it to, because once the car starts, I can then diagnose issues, no problem whatsoever. I think it was at this point they said that they told me how many things were wrong with the car. They're like, hey, so there were 6 things wrong with the car. How many have you done? I'm like, there was 6 things wrong with the car. There was things I assumed I fixed. And one was the ice, one was that fuse, one was the battery, and then the 4th one was the spark plug wires. Well, then they're like, maybe you should check the spark plug wires more. And I start pulling on some of the spark wires, and I find a couple of that are broken because I pull them harder. But the thing is, they don't just like not come off. They come off, but then the little metal piece that sits in on the spark plug stays. So I gotta go run and get needle nose pliers, and now I'm pulling the little metal pieces out of there, and they give me a whole new set of spark plug wires. So I put a whole new set of spark plug wires on, and at this point I'm rushing because I look up at the clock, and it can't be more than like 20 minutes on the clock. At that point was like, okay, I fixed some spark things. You know, I'm gonna check fuel. And so what I do is I decide, instead of doing it the way you would normally check fuel injectors is, you know, you would take them all out, you put them on a bench, you do a fuel flow test on them, all that. I didn't have time for that. So I just lifted up the actual fuel rails, and I had someone start the car. And I watched which ones were firing. And I could see 1 on the passenger side and 3 on the driver's side were not firing. So at this point, I then asked for fuel injectors. And they're very specific about you asking for an amount of things. And there's 8 fuel injectors total, and I just asked for fuel injectors. They brought me 4 boxes. And as they're bringing me these boxes, I start pulling the fuel injectors out of the fuel rails, and I pull them all out because I start to like, you know, look at it, and then I see that there's 4 boxes, and the boxes were big. Fuel injector boxes, all the ones I've run into, are like small. They're like this big. They're not huge boxes. These are like massive boxes, so I just assumed there was 2 per box. I'd pull one of the boxes out to put the two new fuel injectors in, and there was only 1 per box. Luckily, I just have a pretty good memory, and I was able to remember which ones were not firing. And I was able to get the one back out of the box that I got and bring it back to use back on the car again. I then start to put these new fuel injectors on the one side, and they just were not going on. I had so many problems getting them to seat, to getting them to fit. Ends up being that there was O-rings. Sometimes on some of them, there were 2 O-rings shoved up in the actual fuel rail. So they were just stuck there. And at this point, I'm like, looking at the clock, I have like 15 minutes left. And they gave me some grace because they would stop the clock, I think, sometimes, because they want to give you this car. The whole thing is that the entire day, from the second I showed up, it was like, look, we're basically giving you this car. You're getting this car, is basically what they kept telling me. And it's going to be all tuned to you. And we're going to make sure you can get this car. Like, I started feeling really sad because I just could not get these fuel injectors on. And they started pausing time. They came in and checked with me. I eventually found the O-rings. I ended up lifting the whole thing up. We ended up finding all the bad O-rings and pulling them all out. And I put the new fuel injectors in. It probably took 20 minutes, which just sucks. Which, from a mechanic standpoint, 20 minutes to change some fuel injectors, that's pretty quick. But like, in the sense of what this was, I was struggling hard. So after I got these fuel injectors finally in, it probably took like 20 some minutes. I am feeling like crap because it took me way longer to get them in than it probably should have taken. Even though, like I said, a mechanic would have charged a couple hours to do fuel injectors, and I did them in still like 20 minutes. I just felt like it was a rookie mistake that I just left the O-rings in there and it was not fitting. Honestly, that one was my bad. I should have no problem putting fuel injectors in, and for some reason it was just not working how it should have worked. Once they were in though, I go back in and I try starting the car. The car starts and it's running honestly pretty well. It's definitely down on a couple cylinders. So I really quickly asked for an IR gun. They bring me like an infrared gun and I start walking around looking at the exhaust, because on old cars like these, if you need to figure out which cylinder is not firing, it's really easy to do with a IR gun or something that measures temperature. You just walk around, you look at all the temperature of all of the exhaust runners, and you see which ones are hot and which ones aren't. So I go around and I see that, you know, the back, it's number 4, which is the backmost one on the passenger side, and I think number 5 on the driver's side are not firing. So I immediately am like, okay, there's something wrong with this. And then the hint was that, hey, what would be causing that to happen? It's like you've almost touched it, but it's a little deeper than that. That was the hint. It's just a little deeper. And like I said, how LS engines are started up is it's coil, spark wire, spark plug. So when he says that, I assume it's, you know, the spark plug, because it's down further. It's down. And I pull out the spark plug and the spark plug looks fine. But I'm like, but they told me it was deeper. And I'm like, and I don't have a gap checker on me, I don't have time. And I'm just like, is it a spark plug? And they just gave me that one. Like, I didn't even have to, like, they didn't even take 10 minutes off the clock for that. They were just like, they basically just gave me the hint at that point. They're like, look, if it's not the spark plug, what is it? And I'm like, well, it's the coil. So I go to start changing this coil, and I'm changing the one. I changed it. I go to get the other one, and the tools are everywhere. It's like hard to find stuff sometimes. It was like hard to find 10 mils. There's like one 10 mil in the entire shop. I start looking around, grabbing things, trying to find crap, and getting the second one on, and they end the clock. And it sucked. I really thought this was something I could do. All my friends thought this was something I would be amazing at. I failed. And at that moment, honestly, I think I put it pretty good on camera, that I wasn't like super sad, but I basically had to sit in the lobby for like 45 minutes after that. And I was just kind of sad, almost cry. I think I kept it pretty good on camera, like I said, but I was really sad. And at that point, I was more mad at myself. I really didn't think it was their problem. I didn't think that at that point that I really had been bamboozled in any way. I just thought that I did a bad job. I don't know. It just didn't feel good. It really didn't feel good. But I had to keep it up because I had to get back on camera. I can't be that sad on camera. I gotta not be super embarrassed. For me, it was just a really sad night. I got home, I looked at my hands, I was burned, I was bleeding, I had marks all over myself. I had been sweating all day so bad, and they made me wear this green shirt because they wanted me to stand out. And there's a reason I wear black. I'm a sweaty boy. There's no denying that. But between having to get all soaking wet from the ice and then rushing, I just sweated my ass off the entire time. It doesn't look good. It's not flattering. It sucks. But at that point, I was just trying to win a car. I wasn't trying to be, you know, good looking on camera. The more I thought about it, the more I was just pissed. I was just like pissed at myself, pissed that I didn't do it, pissed I didn't win the car. I mean, it's a Z06. You know how cool it'd be to own a Z06? And I'm very lucky that I have cars and I have cool cars. And I have the time and the ability and sometimes the money to be able to put into things like this. The next morning when I woke up, it really kind of hit me on the whole thing. I didn't realize how much I was hinted towards some of the wrong things. You know, at the hint of the spark plugs being deeper than the spark plug wires, that hint, giving me the hint that like, hey, the crankshaft position sensor is a really good idea. Like, that's a thing that goes wrong a lot in these cars, telling me that there was something wrong with air, which ended up being about the vacuum, and there being vacuum leaks in the car. But vacuum leaks don't make a car not start. Not always. At least car will sputter over. So I was being thrown in a direction. It's like, I was trying to get the car to start. Once the car starts, I'll find vacuum leaks. But like, the car should start with a vacuum leak at least. It should at least start. It'll idle really poorly, but the car will start. And I understand what they were trying. It's like, oh, that's the air part of the fuel and the spark. But like, the car had air. A vacuum leak isn't a lack of air, it's an excess of air. So between that and a couple other little things that just kind of pushed me in directions that didn't help me, I kind of realized that I kind of got screwed a little bit. Almost everyone else that did these fixed car, win a car, they knew about the car. The Subaru guys knew about the car. There was only one that they didn't know about the car, and it was the Nissans. And with the Nissan, they basically told him exactly what he didn't know, helped him through the process to get it done. That's where it was like, I thought that's what I was gonna get, and I didn't. And you know, it's not, I'm not like mad at them. I mean, for them to give me a car and even give me the opportunity to do it, it's gracious. I am extremely happy that I even got the opportunity to meet them, be there, be in a video, and do the whole thing. It's no beef to them, no problem to them. I just think this one wasn't thought through as much as the other ones were. And whose fault that is, I don't know. And I'll show my video at the end of this whole thing just so you can see what I said. And I don't think I said anything that would have, you know, made them think I wanted a Corvette or that I could do stuff on a Corvette. I feel like if the car was anything pre-1980, I would have got it like that. If it was a Ford, something of that sort, things I've worked on. You know, there's so many things that I felt like I could have done if it was another car. I just didn't know anything about the car and how to work on it. That's really the true problem. And then when I was given what I thought were hints, they were really more of like a joke or a misdirection to push me in a direction that ended up taking time off or putting me in a setting. And I don't think it's their fault. I don't think all of them knew everything that was wrong with the car. I think that they had a list of things that were wrong and they were just in their head thinking, that's why they said in the beginning, oh, there's an air problem. The air problem wouldn't make the car not start. That was probably on a script or on an outline talking about what was wrong with the car. He was genuinely trying to help me. It's just like, I don't think he understood what the problem really was, so he was not pushing me in the direction I needed to go at that point. There were things I could have done better. I could have, you know, checked all the spark plugs when I checked the one. You know, apparently a way to check fuel injectors, which Adam, the shop manager, told me after this, is you take a screwdriver and put it up to a fuel injector and you put your ear up to it and you can hear the clicking. I didn't know that. I now know that now and I will use it for the rest of my life. I work on old cars. The cars I showed in my video are old cars, and the ones that aren't old cars are Nissans and Mazdas. They aren't Chevys. It felt like I was just put in a situation where I had no idea what to do on the car. I ended up probably getting about 2 hours to 2 hours and 15 minutes of time to actually fix the car. They were very gracious with like pausing it here and there when things were going awry and they had questions or something was up, or who knows how long they paused it for me when I was doing the injectors. At the end of the day, I'm just, you know, I'm over it now. It was a really cool experience, something I'm never going to forget in my entire life. It sucks that I did not win the car. It really does. And I am the first person to lose it. And the entire day, they were like, oh, we're basically going to give it to you. We're going to give it to you. You know, we're basically going to give all this stuff to you. For them to be saying that and then me not get it, you know, it hurts. It kind of sucks. And I know there's going to be people who are going to be like, oh, I could have done that. I could have done that. I'm sure you could have. It was hard. I mean, I'm hurting. I was sore. Every part of my body was hurting. My knees, my arms, my legs, my calves. I felt like I had just failed myself at the end of the day, and that, like, I shouldn't feel like that. And I'm lucky. I got to do it. At the end of the day, I got my chance. I own cool cars. I'm happy. I have Mustangs. I have an old Ranchero I built. I'm building a drift car with an LS and a T56. You know, we're racing a Miata. I get to go home and race my dad's Shelby whenever I want to and drive fast and have a fun time. Like, I'm lucky. I am. I guess I'm just not lucky enough to win that car. I would have really liked it. I was going to put a supercharger on it. I was already thinking, I was like, shoot, when am I going to do this thing once it's mine? You know, where are we going to take it? What track are we taking it to? What are we going to do with it? It would have been cool. It would have been cool. At the end of the video, they gave me $1,000 to, you know, for my services per se, aka putting on the exhaust system. I'm taking that $1,000 and I'm gonna do some cool things. This is my Ranchero. My Ranchero, I finished this project in December of last year. It's painted, it has a new engine in it. There's a couple things I haven't been able to do to it. The distributor, since I bought the car, the vacuum advance has not worked. I'm losing out at like 20-something degrees of timing at lower end throttle positions, and it's just a little sluggish from the line. And I think giving a little more timing would really help that. The other thing I'm gonna do to it is I'm putting some long tube headers on this thing. I found a set of long tube headers. I purchased them. I'm gonna paint them. I'm gonna make them look really nice. We're gonna put them on this car. This car should probably be jumping to something around 300 something horsepower once I'm done with it. This is my way of taking something that ended up being kind of crappy to me and making it something good. I'm not just gonna go put that $1,000 in my bank account and sit on it. I'm making this thing faster. I'm gonna use it for my cars because that's what I would have used any other time. So thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Donut. Appreciate all of you. I hope I can meet you guys again sometime soon. And if you like these cars or any other cars we have in our fleet, please come subscribe. We're only doing bigger, better, and cooler things as time goes on, and we'd appreciate the sub. So thanks so much, and thanks for watching. Hi, my name is Sam Burton. I'm originally from Delaware, but I've been in SoCal for over 4 years. I work in the film industry in the commercials, music videos, and feature films. Cars for me has just been something that I've done since I was little. I've never worked in a shop and I don't have a certificate, but I do have a text from my dad saying that I was good at holding the flashlight when I was a kid. I have a tool collection that I'm making an apprentice mechanic shaking his boots. And I have everything from the basics to the specialty tools to do ungodly things to all the Euro cars. I've got enough electrical experience to fix the leftovers of what a rat might have done living in a car for the last 20 years. As for what I've done everything from intakes on newer Mercedes, air suspension, brakes, heads, pulled swaps over a newish V8 onto my current project here. I rewired a whole Beetle and also pulled the engine in that same Beetle after I blew it on the 134 going 5,500 RPM. Even though that was more like just changing a complicated light bulb, most of my projects are difficult because of rusty bolts and not planning enough before we start. I did suspension on my Mercedes wagons one time, and it was a combo of stuck bolts, no power tools, and some stupid triple square bits that no one in the valley had in stock that day. I bought a VW and brought it from rags to riches over quarantine, which was a huge undertaking. I'm super happy with how it came out. I say in general I don't have a specialty in anything, but I definitely hate doing body work. I'm not precise enough for that shit. I feel like I'm pretty good at finding and diagnosing problems on cars. Whether it's not starting or I'm hearing like it sounds like there's a vibrator stuck in the brake caliper, I'll probably find it. I understand mechanically and electrically how cars work, and even the dark arts of the fuel sucking machines called carburetors. I'd say like 8 out of 10 times I can figure it out without Googling it or calling my dad. I've never welded or fabricated anything more than a plate with a few holes in it, but my brain is really mechanical and I'm really good at figuring out solutions to things and make something work. As for welding, I did a few welding commercials and I've watched enough people do it to probably stick 2 pieces of metal together with some boogers safely if my life depended on it. As for an animal, I think I would just be a bird. Like, you could fly anywhere you wanted to. Plus, have you seen those things? They can like solve puzzles. I've been watching Donut for a few years now, and I'd say that Zach Job is probably one of my favorites. And even though he's a little newer, some of the build series you guys do are my favorites. And any series where I'm learning something and it's something I don't know already, I'm really happy to watch it. Honorable mention to Jeremiah because he has the same last name as me. I feel like my favorite manufacturer has to be Shelby, if that counts. I grew up with Cobra replicas, and a GT40 Mark II is my dream car. I pretty much like all cars though. I go to car shows of all types and appreciate it all. Euro would probably be my favorite though, other than American. My current project is a 1966 Ford Mustang that is going to be planned to be an all-out race car and is going to be a Porsche run for its money at Willow. My other project is a 1969 Ranchero that I'm building to be a reliable daily and to lug gear around for work. I don't know what a rear brake bias rotation is other than just adjusting the brake balance between the front and rear, but it sounds like something a mechanic would tell my little sister she needs to get done on her BMW. Anyway, I'm an all-around fan of the show, and I would love a chance to shoot my shot and possibly win a car out of it. I feel like I'd be pretty good at whatever you guys throw at me, but I also feel like it would challenge me and give the anxiety-filled voice in my head one last thing to bitch about. Hi, Fixed Car team. This is Sam again, but a year later. I would really love to have this opportunity to do this. I think it's a really cool thing, and I think I would be very good at it. The reason I want to do this, I want to update kind of the things I've done in the last year. I have now finished that Ranchero. It is completely finished. It is in a nice forward gray color. A lot of my opinions on cars really haven't changed. I've definitely worked a lot more in JDM. I've done a lot of work on my friend's 240. I've started building a full-on pro-spec drift car with 12-point cage, LS, T56, the whole thing. So I've gotten a lot more into wiring, a lot more into welding, and I've definitely grown as a mechanic and as a home mechanic at that immensely over the last year. And when it comes to diagnosing projects, I've even gone further than that. My little sister bought a 230 Mercedes compressor, drove to San Francisco, and blew a valve on the way back. Took the entire top end apart, no instructions. Sadly, you know, all the forums have disappeared for that car. There's not a lot there to like take apart an engine for a Mercedes C230. So I basically did it with no instructions and got the head refinished and new valves put in and put all the thing back together, and she's driving that around today. But I think it was just been really good. I want to make this little update video because I don't really have time to make a whole nother video. I would love to. I'm really, really busy right now. I hope that the old video would suffice, and I was really excited to be part of the project last year, and I hope that even though it didn't happen and I didn't finish up, or, you know, but I hope this year maybe something can happen from it. And yeah, either way, good luck, and I hope to see you guys soon.